Hey there, and welcome to my 8th devlog video on creating my first indie game. In the last video I went over an inventory system that I've been building, but how are we supposed to get the trees and items that will exist there? Today I'll show you through introducing the player shops. Before I get into the shops themselves, I'll show you how as the player you'll be able to buy items and how the items themselves will be generated. In the top left there is a new UI piece which you might have noticed. This piece in the top left is the player's silver, their in-game currency. The top right is the day counter, the single biggest notifier in the progression of the game. I've added a fade effect every time the player cycles through the modes, which tries to get this across. They do the cycle through going through either of the door keys that are present in each mode. The days counter will affect the amount and ability of the items generated in the shops, but will also affect the amount and difficulty of enemies that spawn in the secondary mode. To get to the shop first, the player needs to pull up the glade map, as I'm calling it, by pressing P. The background and icons in this map are currently all placeholder assets. The background will eventually represent a crudely drawn map with two icons that you can see represent the two shops that are available. I've labelled these two shops, Botanist and the Bounty Hunter, for now. Not really groundbreaking titles, I know, but the idea is that they'll have more thematic names in the future. Selecting one of these will fade you out to the same place, but depending on which one you select, the content you see there will be different. I've added some simple dialogue and text animations when you first arrive at the shop. Again, it's not the best dialogue in the world, but you get the random selection of 3 greeting and farewell messages that are tailored to both the Botanist and the Bounty Hunter. These dialogue animations can be skipped by simply clicking anywhere on the screen. Clicking here will also reveal the shop panels. I'm currently in the Botanist shop here. This shop will contain all of the tree saplings, consumable items, and also miscellaneous barriers and traps. These icons are all placeholder currently. If I go into the contents of the inventory itself, these items have all been generated with the current day survived in mind. If I go out and cycle the days, a different selection of items will be present. For the sake of testing, I've modified the system to increase the amount and ability of item selection every day instead of every 5 or 10 days. You can see by day 6 the item pool is a lot larger and the items are far more varied. If the player has enough silver for an item, they can buy it, at which point an instance of the item is removed from the shop inventory and then added to the player's. You can see this in the inventory objects themselves too. This item can now be accessed by the sandbox player using the inventory box explained in the last video. If the player does not have enough silver, then both the price and the silver amount will flash red. Moving on to the Bounty Hunter, his shop will contain the weapons for the player to buy, and also ammunition. These weapons have yet to be created, but I've designed the ammunition drop rate so that the player shouldn't be allowed to rely on just one weapon. Like the Botanist, the weapons and ammunition are created based on the days survived. There is one more section here that will be pivotal to increasing player funds. These boxes conveniently labelled with my placeholder sprite logo are the contracts. Each one of these contracts can be selected by the player and creates this window. Although it doesn't look like much with all these placeholder assets everywhere, this will contain the details of enemies or trolls that you will need to kill in order to gain a reward labelled at the bottom of the contract. I plan for this also to be a procedural set of data, changing the amount of trolls targeted, the troll type and the reward all based off what current day survived by the player. If the player accepts the contract, then it gets set in the game manager as the current contract. This can be overwritten, however, if the player decides to accept another contract, and then this can continue until the player has no contracts left. I should probably add a warning box for this in the future, although I have at least added in a joke message of sorts by the bounty hunter explaining the reason for the player being unable to select any more contracts. So this covers the basics of the inventory system so far. There are more elements of functionality I want to add, like accounting for bulk buying items and getting the player selling items as well as buying them. As with the inventory UI itself, I do want to look into getting it more in theme with an early PlayStation 2 era retro realistic art style that I'm going for. I will also be looking into commissioning some artwork for this. That's all I have for today though, thanks for watching.